recorded for our website for posterity in the long run. I don't imagine it means that there's 3,000 people streaming us live right now.
No?
So anyway, my name is, you guys all know me, Blake, and I am from NNSP, and the point of today is to talk about scheduling and try to come up with some innovative ways to help schedule community service, community engagement, and partnership programs into our school day, with the idea being that all kids have equal access to these opportunities. And so I would like you guys to introduce yourselves and then talk a little bit about how your school schedules these, because every school is unique, and if there were one answer, every school would adopt it. How do you schedule these opportunities for your students? And then we will, after we do that, we will talk about how we wish we could schedule them at our schools. So Emily, why don't you start and tell us a little bit what you guys do at Greenwich. Oh, we can't hear you. Is it just me?
No, we're not.
I can't hear her either.
You're right, nor can I. We can see you, but we can't hear you. Huh? One moment, she says. We can read sign language. Yeah, that's good. She will be back.
Technology is great, and then it's challenging.
Yes, yes.
And then it provides its challenges, you're right.
This is called learning to roll with the flow. Here, Emily is coming back. There's still no sound, though. Do you have maybe if you put headphones in?
I thought for a moment I saw on her screen a little icon with the microphone with the mute, so I wonder whether she needs to actually change the setting.
I didn't see that, and I actually, because I have control of those here, so.
You might try muting her and unmuting her just to see whether or not anything changes.
So Hannah, is school going well?
Yeah, it's going well. It's been a really big year of transitions, a lot of leadership change, and I think just kind of now getting into the groove of things. So it's been good. It's been a good year. We also underwent a ton of construction, so everybody was physically moved to different classrooms and everything. But I scored. I got an actual classroom, and it's dedicated to like the leadership and service learning work that I do. So
that's
awesome. It's
nice.
That's made a huge difference. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
And do you have a head of school, or you have an interim? I know your head of school sort of abruptly left.
Yeah, we have an interim now. So she's just here for the year. And then we have a new high school principal. And then we have a new director of educational programs. So so we had a lot of change this year. Yeah.
Now's the time to start advocating for what you want.
Right? Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, this is the way we've always done it, don't you know?
Yes.
Well, maybe especially as the new person is appointed. And Hannah, have they given you any timetable about when the longer term head will begin? Is the expectation that it'll be July 1?
I don't know exactly. I think they're just now starting to do the official search. So I don't know. Right now it's kind of, I think, maybe not a moving target. They might have the goal of July 1, but I guess we'll see. I've gotten to the point now where I'm just like, okay, you just tell me when. We'll roll with it.
If you have an interim that you can work with, then you're good. And my guess is that interim could work another 7 months or could work another 19 months. And either way, it would be fine. I'm just curious. This is the time of year when it could go either way, I think, in terms of the way searches happen. In the old days, says the old lady on the line, 6 months was a reasonable window, and these days we're seeing 18 months more often. So I wonder. But we'll see, right?
No, that's a good question. I mean, I think, I guess time will tell, but I've noticed that it's a very long process.
Yes. Good.
Hi there. How are you?
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm sorry. The the pop-up didn't come up for quite some time, so it just came up, so I clicked in.
Oh, I'm sorry. I sent it around 11:50, but we're waiting. We had one other woman who was on, and then she was having connectivity issues, and so I maybe we should just start without Emily, and then we can move forward when she gets here. We're going to introduce ourselves. I already introduced myself, and I know that Dave already knows who I am. So, Kenna, why don't you introduce yourself and then tell us a little bit about the programs that you have at your school.
And Blake, are you getting a lot of audio feedback since Dave's coming on? I wonder, Dave, if you mute until it's your turn, if that might make that go away.
I got it.
Claudia, you got it?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Okay,
thanks.
go ahead.
Beautiful. Okay. So hello, everybody. Dave, actually, you and I met at the CSEE conference a couple of weeks ago in Baltimore. So hello again. So I'm the service learning coordinator at the lab schools in Chicago. And I oversee middle school through high school service learning. Well, I call it service learning, but really it's the umbrella of like any kind of partnerships in the community, whether it be through service learning, like curricular service learning, or community service through our high school, and then different programs through, I guess, like any other kind of partnerships of bringing people into the school to teach students about community issues or the work that they're doing in the community. So yeah, I guess that's kind of the overview of what I do. I can get into it later once we start digging into conversation. But the scheduling piece, I mean, I'm sure there wouldn't have been a topic if it weren't something that so many people have challenges with. So I'm looking forward to hearing about innovative ways of integrating it more into the school day. So
I hope so. Dave, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Dave Aldrich, and I'm the CEO and founder of Grab the Torch. We're the traveling leadership, ethics, and philanthropy institute around the country, and we've had a public purpose since day one with independent charter and public schools. So we're completely committed to this. We just went to the NPEA conference at Roxbury Latin the other day and promoting this initiative and the importance of service learning. So our big news is that we're going to be we're in the process of developing an online curriculum that will, the service learning component is our first piece, and it looks great, and I can't wait to share it with everyone. So it's really our goal. So we're here to do anything we can to support all these partner schools. And what we did last time, I was on the phone actually. I couldn't get on the phone, but I want to once again extend scholarships to NNSP schools. I'll provide up to $1,700 of the $2,000 for an NNSP member. So keep that in mind and sending kids to us, because we're committed to this great work, and we're completely behind Blake and her great initiatives.
Well, thanks, Dave.
Hey, anything.
Claudia,
Sure, I'm busy reading about Dave's organization on my phone while I was introducing himself. I'm Claudia Daggett. I'm the president of ISACS, the Independent School Association of the Central States, and this is a topic, not just scheduling, but all kinds of civic engagement that is of great interest to me. I serve on the NNSP board, and at a recent board meeting, our board president, Todd Bland, said, I want every board member to commit to getting to one Google Hangout. So I'm here in part to just watch how this works, but I'm also interested in meeting folks doing the good work and hearing about the issues. So happy to be on board.
well, thanks for being here. And I'm sure with all your varied school experience, which you didn't even touch on, you have seen many different ways of how scheduling can impact this work and help it move forward, and also ways that schools are inadvertently making it harder on themselves to integrate this work into their day-to-day lives. I just got an email from Emily, and I suggested that she call my cell phone and video in, but listen and participate through my speakerphone. So this is how our get around on when your speakers don't work. So hopefully she'll be here in a second. I guess, Hannah, the best way to start is to have you sort of explain to us how it works at your school, and then we can talk about ways that we've seen in other schools. This is a unique situation where there aren't there's more organizations here than schools participating in this conversation, but we all have plenty of experience with schools, and I happen to have a couple of examples in mind of schools that I think really have touched on how to get this into their school curriculum and other ways to look at it. And so I'd like us to talk about what you're doing at your school. Emily will hopefully join and talk about what she's doing in her school, and then we can strategize about how it could be better. Does that sound like that works for you?
That's great.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Perfect. I'll kind of separate it into two categories. So in the way that we do service learning work in the middle school is a little bit different from our high school. So in the middle school, it's almost completely run through our advisory program. So this was kind of over the last couple of years. This is my 4th year now at Lab. So I think starting off early on, it was kind of like one-off things that I would get going with one advisor that was interested or a class. And then now it's become almost every advisory in the middle school will participate in some sort of community engagement work throughout the course of the year. So our intention this year really was to have students have multiple experiences with the same organization. I guess a scheduling issue has been just the number of organizations that we've been able to partner with and the dates that they're available matching with ours. So that's just been something that we've kind of had to take a step back and realize that maybe our goal of having, 3 times over the course of the year for every single advisory isn't realistic this year, but as we keep growing partnerships, that maybe that's something that we could continue with. So in the middle school as well, what I've really been trying to work on is bringing in context to the work that students are doing. So not just having them go once to serve at a school or some other public institution, but really to learn more about why it is that they're doing the work that they're doing, what kind of issues is the community facing, what kind of assets does the community have, and really do the pre and post work to give students the time to discuss and reflect on the work that they're doing. This year, it's worked out really well in the middle school because we changed our schedule. And it's actually really worked to my advantage. I'm sure that there are other schools or other divisions that are having, or other classes that are having issues with it, or trying to adapt. But for me, it's made we have this period on Wednesdays where it's about 2 hours that I can use on a given Wednesday that's open for advisory. It's a mix of advisory time and the seminar period. So we combine those, and we're able to fit it into the actual school day. We also have early dismissal on Wednesdays now, so it ties in right to advisory, or excuse me, right into dismissal. So for the second half of the day, let's say on Wednesday, students can go with their advisor to a community site and then also come back and have time to reflect. So that's worked out really well. In the high school, we have a requirement for sophomore students, so they dedicate 40 hours to, or they commit to 40 hours with one organization over the course of the school year. So that's mostly done after school and on the weekends. I would actually say completely done after school and on the weekends on students' own time. And so that's something that I'm really trying to look for alternative ways, because I think if we can integrate it more into the school day and have it be an experience that all students are having, that's not an additional requirement or an hour requirement, then I think it could be much more meaningful. And I think it could also give a lot more context to the work that students are doing and actually give them a place to be thoughtful and critical about community issues, so that they find, so that they can think through more about the impact that they can have in a community, and really about the root causes of social issues. So that's a challenge to, I think all students are very overscheduled. So adding this community service requirement to their already busy weeks is difficult, and it becomes, I think, one more thing for some students to just check off to graduate. So so that's a difficulty. But then also something that's been very helpful, and that's worked really well, is integrating service learning into specific course curriculum. So I work with Spanish classes, for example, where we'll use the actual dedicated Spanish class time to do a pre-reflection, learn vocabulary that would be applicable to the experience that they're going to have. Then we'll do which students have to actually miss other classes for, but then maybe they'll miss one class, and then their Spanish class will go and serve at an organization where they're speaking predominantly Spanish, and then come back and we have another class period that we can use. So that's, I think, one way where we've worked it into the school day, but it does eat away time from other classes. So, so there you go.
Hold on. I'm hoping this is Emily. I'm sorry, this is not normally what I would.
Oh, no problem.
Hello. No, I actually I want a free trip to Disney World, so I apologize.
Oh,
I really answered that. So does anybody have any questions for Hannah while we are before I start asking questions?
I don't. No.
No? Claudia, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
All right, so I have a couple of questions for you, Hannah.
Yeah.
Does the upper school have the same early dismissal half-day Wednesdays as the middle school?
No. So the schedule is a very big challenge. In the high school, we have a schedule that is, I think we've had many years of people trying to work to change it, but there hasn't been anything instituted. So there's very little time in the day, and all of the periods that are available are, kind of lots of departments are looking to use that time, whether it's through counseling, advising. So it's a shared time that's kind of grabbed up by everyone.
And there's no advisory program either in the high school?
There is, yes, there is an advisory program, and we meet 2 days of the week for 10 minutes and 1 day of the week for 30 minutes.
Oh, okay. So it's not a significant amount of time. And do you have a prescribed advisory program, or is that just a period of connection for the kids with an advisor?
Yeah, so it's kind of a mix. So there's a balance, and it depends on the year. I'm actually the lead advisor for sophomore cohort this year, which works really well because the service learning program is run through the sophomore year. So some of the time that we could use is to have advisors do programming during the 30-minute periods once a week. There's also, yes, there are some prescribed programs in place, but then there's also time to just have students and advisors be together and not have necessarily an agenda.
Right, just connection.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I had another question for you that you prompted. So what would now it comes back. You said that the community service or the service learning program, is run through the sophomore year. And then you said also that the sophomores have this 40-hour commitment, which I've not heard before to one organization, which really allows for a deeper experience as opposed to just 40 hours across the board, because it could be 2 and 3 year throughout. So is that the freshmen don't have this and juniors and seniors don't have it? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's concentrated just in the sophomore year. So so freshmen, juniors, and seniors don't have a requirement, just sophomores do. And I think that it was originally housed in the sophomore year because juniors are concentrating mostly on doing college counseling during advisory time. Seniors are checked out halfway through the year, and freshmen are working on the transition into high school. So it was, at least I think, through the lens of maybe the advisory program or just what students had on their plate at that time, it made sense to put it in the sophomore year. And that's a real challenge, I think, too, is I think the concentrated year has its advantages, and that, like you said, you're able to maintain a relationship or build and strengthen a relationship with one organization over the course of your year, and really kind of dive deeper into the work that you're doing. And I think the hope is that it's a hook in a sense, and then junior and senior year, you would either continue or look for something similar, or it would help give you some direction. But I think also it can turn into the opposite effect of being like, whew, okay, done with that.
Right.
Now let's move on to something else. So
and you guys don't keep data on which juniors and seniors continue on with the organizations that they dedicated themselves to their sophomore year?
Yeah, that's something that I think we need to be better about. Last year we sent out a survey to gather that information from juniors and seniors, but the responses were limited, so it's not a significant number.
No, but if you did it every year, even when the responses
Right.
are sort of insignificant year after year, eventually they'll become significant, you know?
Right, that's true. Mm-hmm.
So I was just thinking that. And so I'm just thinking about if it's just sophomores, it would seem like it would be a good place to have it as a class because all sophomores are doing it, but there's no room for another class, a core class.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I think that's what I'm dreaming about for like I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure how realistic it is to think of adding that in before we change the schedule, but maybe it could be, or maybe it's not. So the conference that Dave and I were at in Baltimore a few months ago, or a few weeks ago, feels like it could have been longer. There was a presenter from the Urban School of San Francisco, and they've integrated a lot into their core curriculum for freshmen through seniors. So that, I left feeling like, oh, this is it. This is where it's at. And then you come back in the reality of how do I make that fit into, what's already in place here at our school, and they're different. Priorities are different, and not just priorities, I guess, just the structure that's in place is very different. So yes, that was a long answer to your suggestion of the class. I do think that would be something to aspire to, but I don't know how realistic it is to think about putting it in place in the near future.
All right, so if you guys speak up if you have other questions, because I will ask questions for 3 hours.
Yeah, and sorry, I feel like this is like consulting. So
that's great. Take advantage. This is if this isn't putting you too much on the spot, I think it's awesome.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
Blake, is Trinity on the west side a member of NNSP? Oh,
no.
Well, they were at the conference with us, and they're doing a case study about this, and they've hired a woman to head up this whole service learning initiative at Trinity. And obviously it's come from the top down, and I think that you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think there were 8 people from Trinity at the conference in Baltimore. Yeah. So and I said, she was at my focus group, and I said to her, if you can figure this out and do it well and come up with a model and share it with schools around the country, I said you'll be about, you'll walk on water. But a couple of things, that just some case studies that we've done that seem to work, and these are just things that we had done. For one was at Pomfret School. So we had the entire sophomore class come into we did a whole program for the school, and I presented the idea to have one big impact and have one nonprofit that they would focus on. But we really focused on the generational component, so their classmates behind them could take over once they matriculated up. So we did a 3-part series, and I'm a firm believer at that stage is that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. So we had a gathering with all the class and a call to action. We set up team leaders. Those team leaders had 4 or 5 students in each team, and they went out and did this project for Paul Newman's Hole in the Wall gang camp. And then we had, then we brought them all back in, and it was it's all about the empathy angle of the program. And so we thought it was a big success. It was a big success because they brought in 130 new members to Hole in the Wall. And we basically told them that it was also part of the philanthropy initiative. And we said to them, you know, this isn't about raising money. It's about marketing the Newman's brand and bringing more people in and, you know, creating a ripple effect and kind of a tipping point. So we finished. It was great. They didn't raise that much money, nor were they asked to. And then the following year, the next class up called me and said, Mr. Aldrich, we want to continue with this project. We want to do something a little different, but for Hole in the Wall. And I said, well, what do you want to do? And they said, well, we want to climb Kilimanjaro. Huh. So, you know, needless to say, I was happy but shocked that they had, you know, come up with this idea. But they said, we listened very carefully to our classmates who were the team leaders, and we want to continue with the legacy and continue the good work of it was Pomfret with Hole in the Wall. And they ended up raising $30,000 after they paid for their own transportation to Kilimanjaro. And then when they got to the top, they put the Hole in the Wall banner and also the Pomfret banner at the top of Kilimanjaro for photo ops. I mean, it was extraordinary. And then the other thing that we did, we helped create with one of our interns. He convinced the head of school to do an all day of service. So they had one full day, all 4 classes. And it was, again, it's in the northeast corner of Connecticut. So they went into Rhode Island, they went into Connecticut, and obviously Massachusetts, and the entire school went out and worked. And they did it for 2 years. You know, they had the day of service. They came back. They had a full party with all reflections of each component. And I don't want to say this in a disparaging way, but the problem is that they did it for 2 years, and then there was a change in philosophy in the program, and then they dropped it. And it created a real void for the kids that had started the whole program, and it hasn't regained momentum since. So I think it's a lot to do with continuity and consistency whenever we send the kids out to do things like this. So, I mean, that's just one model, but we work with Pomfret and, Ethel Walker and Westover and a whole bunch of others. So there's some good stuff out there, but I think, as we talked about in Baltimore, referring back to the conference, it has to have an all-school buy-in. And basically, we have to get all the teachers and administrators. You know, everyone has service learning and giving in their mission statements. But if you line up all the administrators and all the teachers and everyone at the school and ask them what service learning is, you'll get, 100 different answers. So it's all about, this is a whole thing about educating everyone. And have it such, I had this conversation, again, I'm referring back to the conference with the head of admissions at Harvard. And we were talking about all of this, the kind of the non-cognitive skills that comes through service learning. And she said how much it weighs in their decision now for the non-cognitive skills versus the, the academic. She said, we'll always have the highest academic standards and possible, but we take a much deeper look on these kind of skills. So I think that if each school has to really highlight the importance of this and how it impacts every single class and every single study that they're doing.
Right.
So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks. Yeah. To follow up with the Harvard stuff, I've been talking about it for over a year. Is they released a Turning the Tide, which is a report. It's a report from Harvard Graduate School of Education about the value of looking at your kids and looking at their applicants, not just as AP test scores, SAT scores and grades, but also looking at their commitment to their community, their development for a passion, their advocating for a cause. And I've been saying that for every secondary school in the country, their end game is college admissions. You can take the smallest independent school to the biggest public high school in the country. They are tracking that data because that is what is important. And if college admissions are looking at that, then it is an imperative that schools provide all of their students an opportunity for these engagements and these learning experiences. And so you cannot just wait till after school, because the athletes need to have these opportunities and the drama kids need to have these opportunities. It just can't be another little niche of kids who are the service engagement kids. It needs to be available to all students, because all students have to have this shared learning experience in order to make their applications equal for college. So anyway, that's my little, I really think that schools do, I agree with you, Dave, they have an imperative to provide these opportunities. And I think that's why there's an imperative that they include it within the school day, that it's part of the curriculum, so that every student has an opportunity to do that along with their other interests that they should be encouraged to be developing throughout their high school career. So Hannah, tell me, if you didn't know anything about the lab school or any of the hindrances, what would be the ideal service learning opportunity in your high school? Like what would be so fantastic that you wouldn't even have a job to do? It would be so easy.
Yeah, I try to challenge myself to that a lot, because it's easy to get caught up with the, getting stuck behind an obstacle. But I do think, the components that are really important would be like lasting relationships with community members. So finding a way to get students connected to an agency or to something that they really believe in, and regularly being present and engaged with the work that organization is doing. I think the class time is key. So finding ways to push students to think critically about the work that they're doing and the importance of service work, but then really looking at, like, I think especially coming from an independent school, I always, in any situation, but especially here and places, and challenging students to, I guess, working with students through kind of the continuum of starting with a sense of guilt about or confusion about going into community spaces, and really working with them to about their approach to community building. So the classroom time, I think, is key, not only for reflection, but then also for bringing in materials and resources that can help students learn about different perspectives. And then longevity and legacy, kind of like what Dave was speaking to, like being able to provide spaces for students to be to create something new, but then not to let it drop off. So yeah, I don't know what that looks like. It's hard for me to dream up necessarily like a specific program of what that looks like, but I've been trying to think through like what components are really key to making it a successful program. So,
well, that's great. Those are all obviously very admirable, and they're all attainable. I'm not sure how attainable they all are all at the same exact time, but I'll tell you, if you don't mind, a couple of school examples of just totally different ways of thinking about this, and how obviously it's not a one, you're not gonna be able to fit your school into any other school's schedule identically. Right. But Madeira School in McLean, Virginia has chosen to go to a 7-week block schedule. And I don't know exactly how many blocks they have a year. It might be something like six different blocks. One of those blocks is dedicated to something off campus. So for 7 weeks, every freshman through senior is doing something off campus, and each of their years has a different theme. Their freshman and their sophomore years are tied to service and community. And then their junior and senior year, because they're right outside of Washington, D.C., are connected to advocacy and government, government relations isn't the right word, but, advocating for a cause, learning how laws are passed, etc. So those kids get all of their class time in 6 out of the 7 blocks. And then the 7th block, which is at a different time for every kid, they get this immersion of community engagement, participation, advocacy, etc. They found that the girls, this is an all-girls school, that the girls ask junior and senior year repeatedly to help the freshmen and sophomores with their programs when their blocks overlap. Because having that 7 weeks is just enough to get them completely committed to whatever program that they have dedicated themselves to. So I think the school offers them like maybe 8 options around different areas of community awareness. One being hunger, one being food. That would be food. Housing, etc. And they can choose, and then they focus, and then they find that the girls are returning to those throughout. And even as they're advocating for their causes, their junior and senior years, they're circling back to what they were focused on their freshman and sophomore years. That is not to say that it was an easy transition. I know that it was very hard for their school to do, but it's in its 2nd year, and they are finding that even the teachers that were most resistant are now most supportive. That's one. Another one is a school in Texas where their program is K-12. And the way that they create this longevity is by allowing touch points to community organizations in lower school, and then focusing really hard in high school on those same organizations. So, I lost Hannah.
Oh.
You guys. She'll be back in a second.
She will.
I was on a roll.
You were on a roll. I was taking notes.
And don't think we're not impressed.
Right.
Here she is. Okay.
Hi, sorry.
Oh, it's great.
Started freezing.
So the school in Texas, what they do is make sure that the lower schoolers not only are sort of having touch points with these organizations, but they're seeing the high schoolers dedicating their time. So it's a matter of creating this anticipation in school to when it'll be their turn to have a role. I think when you even have the opportunity with middle schoolers to the longevity of when I'm in high school, I'm going to be the person that comes to the lower school and takes us to do a day of service or whatever. It sounds trite, but I think there's value in that anticipation, and that creates institutional buy-in, because you have children who've been at school for 8 to 9 years who, when they get to their sophomore year, they know that's the year they work with a certain organization. They ask their teachers, when do we get to start working with this? I've been waiting for this for 8 years because I saw them at a program when I was in lower school. My older brother or sister participated in it, what have you. There's a longevity, and that takes a couple years. But it is pretty easy to instill this, play up the notion of the older kids doing really great work and sharing it with the lower grades, so that it's something that kids are looking forward to.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed. I think it cut out earlier. But do the high schoolers go and present to the lower school, or I missed that connection?
All kinds of different. So the lower schoolers, the way they do their services, it's age appropriate. So they'll go and do a little volunteering, and then they'll always create a craft or something tangible for the kids, for the kids to help process it. And the upper schoolers come and help them with the crafts as sort of the guides of processing what they're doing, whether it's working with an environmental agency where they created wind chimes out of water bottles or something, that the upper schoolers are there helping the lower schoolers. So, you know, that alone is a good day for a lower schooler.
Yeah.
And another, this is not, I don't know how to solve this, but Murray School makes sure that they have 30 minutes of processing prior and post to every community engagement program that they run at their school. And they make sure that the post, the reflection part is done when they are interacting with another school. They do a lot of sort of joint community service with other schools. That's one of the ways they've approached their partnerships, is if it doesn't work to work sort of with an organization, they work with an organization with another school, so that the kids are interacting with students from different areas around the city, but they are all going to serve at Martha's Table, which is a food kitchen. But that reflection piece is done jointly, so that you're sort of having double reflection. You're having not only your reflection of your experience at Martha's Table, but you're also having an open conversation with people who are different than you, different perspectives about service or what have you. So that is a different way to approach. It's different because usually you do your reflection once you get back onto campus. And so I thought this was interesting that they always make sure that they leave time for reflection before they leave their service component, their opportunity. I've been talking a long time. Does anybody have any questions or?
Yeah, I was asking about the exemplars you've offered, Blake, and I was thinking about Hannah's description of the constraints she has to deal with. And it strikes me, and then I think about Dave's comment. I think, Dave, you used the language that a successful program you were referring to, it might have been Pomfret, I'm not sure which, but is top down. And it makes me think that we need to figure out how to convince school leaders that this is important enough to create structures for it that work. And I wonder whether any of the three of you have thoughts about how to do that. How do we get the heads and the division heads and the academic deans on board about the importance of this, to the extent that they actually treat it as a priority that drives schedules and logistics rather than is shoehorned in? How do we do that?
It's $1 million question.
It is. It's a whole Google Hangout to itself. But that's where I guess I feel like if I had that silver bullet, I could actually, move forward with that, because I have sort of an avenue into that group, but I'm not sure how to give them the religion that they need on this. So I'm wondering what the three of you are thinking.
Pat Bassett is on our board, and Pat and I have had this conversation over the last 10 years on a pretty regular basis.
Yes.
And I actually continued the conversation with John Chubb, God rest his soul. And I think that the biggest challenge is you need, like, as Blake mentioned, the Harvard study, the game is changing. I mean, the whole world is changing. The independent school is changing. And Mike Connor at the Colorado Independent School Association and also at ERB last week talked about this, is how you separate yourself from the pack. And the days of schools not focusing on service learning, community service, and the non-cognitive skills are over. Because, again, I'll just refer to my conversation with Marlon McGrath at Harvard. And I said to her, can you tell me how much, in the admissions process, how much these non-cognitive skills, and as Blake mentioned, the whole of the child, played in your decision 10 years ago versus now? And she started answering, and I said, I don't want I don't want you to answer right now. I want you to think about it. And I circled back with her in a month. And as I said before, she said it plays a huge role now. Again, she said academics is absolutely key, but we need to look at the whole of the student, how that student interacts with their peers on a college campus, how they engage with their school, how they get involved in the alumni association, how they're groomed for the next generation of leadership at the college. So I think the biggest message is this message to the heads that they have to listen to all the Ivies sign this agreement, this personal portfolio agreement for admissions. And I think every head of school has to see that and really understand that they can't just say, we don't have the time anymore, or our plate is too full, and we can't focus on anything. I mean, it's kind of what we all hear. I mean, I hear it on a regular basis, every time we, go in with a new initiative. So it's a big question. It comes up every time, and every conference, and every organization, and no one seems to have the answer. Yeah. So, and I said to, I said to the people at Trinity, if you can pull this off and become a model of success and share that, I mean, you're going to go, you'll be getting the Nobel Peace Prize with this at NEIS. So I wish I had an answer for you. But I think that going to the Aspiring Heads program and getting them on board early, because before they get before they get into the vortex of being a head of school, which, as you know, is crazy, we need to plant these seeds in the Aspiring Heads program. And you just have to have, even if we did, I mean, if somebody, NNSP started this movement and had this call to action or a contract with every aspiring head that they should do this, that they're committed to do this, and that they're going to be one of 25 head of schools that are leading this charge, it'll start and it'll take off. But I think it's very challenging. It's very challenging. So
that's a great idea, Dave.
Well,
it's one that I've not thought of before. It's great. It's the same idea as teaching our kids these skills when they're young. If you get them before, they won't have to think about it. They're already committed to it. It's a non-issue for them. I also was going to reflect on. I was going to reflect on something else, but I seem to have forgotten again.
Well, while you're thinking, Blake, I want to comment to Dave about the phrase "before the vortex." It strikes me as a wonderful title. So, if you want to write a blog post about this or present remarks at a conference, it's a great title. And I think you're actually really onto something with the notion that we ought to get the leaders as they're emerging rather than after they're beleaguered. I think that's really interesting.
Well, and I think another point too is that we don't have to necessarily think of it as something that's compartmentalized either. It's not like we have science, we have math, we have English, we have service learning. I feel like there's a lot of room for integration and crossover, and in doing one, you can help strengthen the other. So I think trying to find ways in which we can overlap and really help strengthen the entire program as a school is really important. So, and I think about it just through, I do a leadership program, and the dedication that these students put into their leadership training and their peer leaders, so they go in and work with underclassmen, and being able to then see the leadership role that they start taking up in other classes is really incredible, which you wouldn't think it would necessarily cross over, but it does. And I think, getting people in a position of leadership to start thinking about how it can all like spread out to other areas, I think is really important. Sorry, I just had somebody walk into the classroom. So.
It's great.
I'm
It makes you
distracted.
feel like you're in real school.
I know, right? I got a cookie earlier from students, so we're good.
Oh, that's great. Dave, I remember what I was going to say. I've been telling small schools throughout the last 18 months about how I've seen that they are really the ones that are making the most change in terms of integrating this work into who they are. I'm thinking specifically like Roland Park Country Day School in Baltimore. They've really embraced this notion of giving to the community for two reasons. One is that the recession hit them harder than any of the bigger schools, and they really had to struggle to define themselves as to why would you choose to go to a smaller school versus a larger, more established, been around for 250 years, et cetera, school. And so they've made this change. They're ahead of the curve, and they really have made amazing changes in their curriculum and in their scheduling and everything. And so the smaller schools right now are a little bit ahead of the game in this world. And the bigger schools, I was talking to one of those schools in Baltimore not too long ago, they're like a locomotive. And so to make a change for them, it's a much longer process. They have a lot more things to deal with institutionally to make this. But as soon as we get those big schools to shift, all schools will follow, because we all know it's like a big game of middle school fashion. Whatever anybody else is doing, we want to keep up with it and do it. And it's just, I feel like it's NNSP's responsibility to share these stories of these smaller, less known schools that are making these big strides. Like in particular, I spoke to Glenelg Country School and it's in Ellicott City, which is halfway between DC and Baltimore. And they have these amazing programs going on, but they're not a big name. You know, the nation is not aware of Glenelg Country Day School, but I feel like it's our responsibility to make them aware of what their programs are so that other schools will see what is possible. So that was my response. That's our next member profile. Stay tuned, Glenelg Country Day School. Good. But before we run out of time, I wanted to know if anybody has any other questions or suggestions or needs for resources from NNSP that I can share. So Hannah, Claudia, Dave, anybody?
You know, I would love that if you have more, even a list of just suggestions of schools to look into that have found a way to be creative with scheduling, or have gotten over, really, you know, the biggest challenge right now, I think, is trying to get over this 40-hour commitment. So if there's a way to see what transition schools have put in place to move away from that into something that's more integrated, that would be really helpful.
I do think the trend is to not have requirements. There's a trend for schools to say it's just part of our school culture. It's what we do. So I am thinking that somehow getting it so it is something you do, so you don't have to have this requirement, so kids don't feel like it's something they can check off. And one more thing that they filled in the box. And but yes, I'd be happy to share with you all of the interesting schedules. And it makes me realize that we're talking about, at NNSP, we're talking about providing tools and resources for our members, and that would be a really great one to have online for our schools, is just a host of different schedules you can flip through and pick and see. You do an A through F day, or you do block schedule, or you do, you know, just so anyway, put that one on the back burner, maybe.
Okay,
but
thank you.
I'll send you a list of schools to look at and to connect with about different schedules, and maybe not even different schedules, just different approaches to how you can get it into your in front of your kids. Claudia or Dave?
This is great. I'm grateful to be able to participate.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're here. Even in Las Vegas.
This is unrelated, but I'm about to send out books to every NNSP member. This book right here, The Bigs. We just partnered with Ben Carpenter, and it's an extraordinary book on preparing your students for their next phase, and internships and mentorships and very cool stuff. So everyone will be getting a book within the next 2 weeks.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, hey, we're on the team. We're here to help any way we.
You know, it's all about partnerships. Everything is about partnerships and good, solid relationships.
That's right. And sometimes it comes around, and sometimes it doesn't. But you do your very best, and you know, good things will come. Absolutely. So, all right.
Thank you all so much for participating. I hope the size of our group was not a problem. I thought it was a great conversation, and I appreciate you guys taking the time out of the day to talk about how we can make community engagement and partnerships stronger in our schools. For the better, as I called them earlier this week, our emerging citizens who can only benefit from this work. So if anybody has any follow-up, feel free to reach out to me directly, and if not, I'll talk to you all soon. Okay?
Thank you so much.
Good luck to you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, each of you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.